So I have a question for Kathleen Hudson. And the question is, are the leaves turning in Colorado yet?
They are in a few places.
Yeah.
It's actually early this year. So yeah, if you're on the northern part of the state, if you're up by Steamboat Springs or at higher altitude, you'll see some changes already.
So I think what we're going to do today, you're going to be painting aspen trees, but I think one of the things that should be part of this is that when this time of year comes, I'm looking out the window at some fall color that's happening here in the Adirondacks. It's early this year here too. And the tendency is to make things, to paint the color you see, and then you end up with a painting that's a little bit overly garish. And so I'll be curious about how do we get that sense of light? How do we get that sense of color? But how do we do it where we don't make an ugly painting?
That's the signature challenge of painting bright yellow as a local color. You've nailed it.
Yeah. So you're going to show us today. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to do.
Yes. So this is a 48 by 24 that I have on the canvas, or I have up on the easel here. And I'll talk about how to paint aspens in full color without making them look cartoonish. So how to look at reflected light, how to create simplified forms and not try to get into, painting each individual leaf. So how to keep it painterly, but still give that impression of sunlight coming through yellow foliage.
So what makes a painting look cartoonish? What is it that it's a fine line, I know.
It is, yes. If you see repetitive shapes or the impression of filling in lines, if you do a line drawing, get it just right, but then you're focused on maintaining that drawing and painting right to edges, you will run the risk of making trees look cartoonish. And this goes for other trees too, not just aspens. But you really want to get away from that and, try to keep some softer edges in places. Look for ways of creating interest, variety in your painting instead of being repetitive. And then that will help you avoid the pitfall of making trees look cartoonish.
Well, we're going to get to watch you do this. Why don't we get this show officially started?
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhoads. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhoads.
Our guest today is Kathleen Hudson, all smiles, lots of fun to be around, a great painter, a fine human being, and you're going to learn a lot from her today about painting aspens. Let's look at some of her work, though, just to show you that she's the real deal. She's an incredible painter and wonderful to watch. We have some great videos that we've done with her, which you'll learn about later. Look at that waterfall. That's absolutely incredible. Anyway, Kathleen, I was thinking a lot about you because I am painting a giant waterfall painting at the moment. And
oh, wow.
I was trying to put on my inner Kathleen Hudson when I did that. I've got a 4-foot by 3-foot canvas or panel that I have been taking down to the big waterfall here in the Adirondacks. And I'm making it for a local museum, and I'm struggling. So I'm going to watch your waterfall video one more time, and that will help.
Oh, good. Well, I hope it does. Yep. It's all about values more than other subjects, even, because waterfalls are so much about painting grays and just slight variations in color temperature. But yeah, I'm sure you have it in hand.
The tendency is to want to just put a bunch of pure white paint on it, and it just doesn't look right.
Okay, that's well, right.
Why don't you get rolling in your lesson here? We'll talk waterfalls another time.
Sure thing. So I'll zoom out at the end and show you all the full painting, but this is, you can see it's on a nice Hughes easel, so I can put it up and down. But I just got a color block in that I started yesterday. This is from Steamboat Springs area. I shot about 300 or 400 photos a couple of years ago when I was there for an event. And I got lucky and was able to be there right at the height of fall color. And that's going to be happening soon. So if you are in the Western states, you can look it up online, see where fall color is going to reach an area that you might be visiting, and get out there and get some great painting reference, photo reference, and bring it back inside. So one of the challenges of painting aspens is that it's very easy to make things look garish. The yellow color is pretty bright. If you've seen aspens in person during peak color, you've probably noticed that. So there are a few ways of handling that, and one is to paint backlit. So instead of looking at uniformly lit bright leaves in full sun, you will have natural variations in in highlights and lowlights because you're looking at the sun coming through leaves. So you'll have some spots of really bright color, but it won't be uniform because some will be in shadow. So yeah, I haven't decided. There are a few things I'm thinking about with this painting. In my photo reference, there is actually, the sun is coming over the edge of a mountain. This was up near a path outside Steamboat Springs. But so I reserved the highlight for that. I might end up changing this if it looks a little bit too bright or garish. I don't want this painting to be just about the sun. I would rather, have a focal area in here, but then keep interest all the way around the focal area so that it's not just this one point of light. So that's something I'll be thinking about. I have about a half a day in this painting where I've blocked in the shapes and the main colors. With this painting, I did not start with an underdrawing. And part of that, I just went directly in with mostly transparent paint. You can see here, I've got a lot of Indian yellow. I've got transparent yellow oxide, transparent red oxide, some raw umber. So mostly transparent tones. And I tried to keep it bright in some areas, but you can see the darks are all neutral and mostly warm. I did this on purpose. I didn't want to do a detailed line drawing because then I would be tempted to paint just to the edges of shapes, paint within the lines, right? And that's where you start making tree paintings look cartoonish. So doing a more, a looser underpainting will do, that will provide me some structure, but I will not be as tempted to create something that looks cartoonish. So what we'll do now is I'll bring up my reference image over here, and I'll look at where to go next. If there's some shapes that need to be corrected. One thing I'm noticing is I had this tree bent because it's there in my reference photo, but I might kind of have it lean back towards the sky because that's how aspens grow, absent, nature interfering.
Nature is always interfering.
Nature is always interfering, isn't it? Yeah, you got to embrace the chaos. It's one reason I love being around plein air painters so much is you have to be adaptable to be a plein air painter. So it's often, plein air painters make really fun friends to hang out with.
Absolutely.
It's often a low drama bunch too. So it's got that going for it. So like I was saying, this stands out a little bit too much with a high contrast here. Yeah. So I'll keep it light right now, but what I'm going to do first is lighten some of the values around it so that instead of having this point of light that your eye is immediately drawn to, it becomes a little bit more of a subtle thing. So that's, today I'm coming into the studio working on this that I started yesterday. And so if I notice a problem, that's the first thing I need to go and correct. So I'll pull this around so you all can see what I'm working on a little bit more.
Okay.
Centrally, there we go. And so yeah, I'll pick up some of the yellows I mixed yesterday. Most of the yellows that I have pre-mixed are Indian yellow and white, titanium white. Indian yellow is a great mixing color because it's transparent. So you can mix really nice dark tones with it as well as light tones, light values. And so I'll just build out a little bit. I can keep it varied. I can even, I'm using a size 4 brush right now, but I could have probably gone bigger. I might pick up a bigger brush here shortly. So I've got some lighter yellows that I'm going to bring in, and I'm creating some variation here. I might leave some of those darks in places, but it won't be all over the place.
Hey guys, while you're watching, tell us where you're watching from and where and what the status of the color in the leaves is where you live.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about that. So before I go too far, I'm going to change the shape of this tree to have it lean back up vertically. You can see this painting is very yellow dominant, and so a nice complementary color is sort of a blue violet, because that's on the opposite side of the color wheel.
So
So
for the people who are not understanding that, let's pull up a color wheel. And a color wheel basically has opposites, right? So if you were to look at the primary yellow on this screen and walk all the way across the courtyard there to the secondary purple, that would be the complement, right? So the complement means it's the opposite. And when you put the two side by side, you get this wonderful vibration effect. But also, if you mix the two, then you get a neutralized effect. Did I cover that?
you did, yeah.
Oh.
That's perfect. And so yeah, everybody, it's definitely worth your time to look into some color theory, because it will pay dividends in how you make adjustments to your paintings.
Hello, Indonesia. Hello, Germany. So glad to have you guys here today.
Fantastic. We got an international bunch.
Oh yeah, you pull them in every time you come on. Hello, Norway. And then there's 𝗂𝗶𝗁𝗲. That's kind of international.
There we go. So I'm going to change this shape a little bit of this tree. I want to do that before I really get into the leaves, because if I'm going to make structural changes to the trees, then as I'm building leaves and branches outwards, I want those decisions to be correct. If I painted a whole lot here with this tree still leaning and didn't make that change, then I would probably end up having to repaint some sections. So it's just a kind of a convenience, a convenience thing. You always want to, like I said, you want to be dealing with a problem area as soon as you see it. And it's tempting to put it off and think, well, maybe if I work around it or do this other section I like more, I'll get to that later. But
so when you have something, you're putting something down over a spot where the light is really illuminating, does that tend to, I know in an actual photograph, it tends to blow it out, and so you wouldn't put as much dark there. Would that be the case in real life, or can you put a strong dark there and it not feel like the light is radiating?
There's usually a halo effect in real life. You'll notice it more with photography, just because of the way a camera works, but you'll see it. So if you squint when you're painting, painting out on location, then you'll still see a halo effect where the light is bending around an object. So say, look at this. This is the edge of a mountain up here, and there will be a difference in value where the sun is going over the edge of a mountain. You'll notice the same thing if you're doing a sunset painting where the sun is going, dipping below the horizon. The horizon will be a lot lighter. There's this halo effect around the sun because the light is bending around things and traveling through air particles, atmospheric particles, and creating this luminous glow. How much you decide to dial it up in your paintings is really up to you. There are some subjects for which it looks a little bit hokey. That's something I'm being mindful of here, because I don't want this to feel like hokey or sentimental. I want it to feel like a window into an Aspen glade and Steamboat. I want it to feel like a real place. So yeah, that's something, you can rely a little bit on your intuition too. You can paint it how it looks in real life. You can also, if you want to make something that feels a little bit more sentimental, that's fine too. It depends on what your personal vision is and what you want the painting to be. And I think that's fun because we get to be the creative directors of our own work.
Absolutely.
So yeah. So what I'm doing is trying to make this, I'm going to see if it makes it feel a little less, less punchy with that sunlight by creating lighter values around it. And I'll try that first. And if it doesn't look great to me, then what I'll do is darken this area and keep it a little bit more like what I've got over here, just to imply that there might be some brighter sunlight coming through there because I've got shadows down here that that sort of flow with the sun direction. You can see the sun is right here, so the shadows are going to be coming out from from that angle. That's something you want to be mindful of too. If you've got a sun over here and your shadows are going the wrong direction, then it's going to look a little goofy. So
yep.
You can make it up, but don't make up the the angle of where the shadows fall.
Question from Jada: do you make any different choices on the paint because you are working close to life size?
I don't find that I paint that much differently. What I do is I might put more detail in the focal area. So yeah, I'll have some areas of detail where I can actually put a few individual leaves. I try to be selective about it because if you get too detailed on it, it starts looking a little bit overwrought. But yeah, I do like that working larger makes a painting feel a little bit more like a window. If something is small, then you're a little, you're inherently constrained by the size. But with something that's larger scale, it has more presence on a wall. So, I whenever I'm starting a painting, I'm thinking about how it will look on a wall or in a gallery. And I want this to be something that people are drawn to from across the room. So, I want something that has a compelling value design. And then I want it to evoke a mood. And so, yeah, that's always in the back of my mind as I'm approaching a painting. And a lot of those decisions happen even before I start to put paint to canvas. I can adjust my decisions along the way, but the most important decision you make is what you choose to paint and your composition. And those are decisions that happen very early in the process. So if you make good go ahead.
Good. I was just going to say, let's keep painting. This is great.
Yes, totally. I can turn around and keep talking the whole time. All right, so I'll keep making adjustments to this value towards the outside so I can create some more glow. I'll do this for a little while. I'll also show you all a little bit about how I look at tree trunks. And because that's another place that can be a challenge because it's easy to veer into line drawing too much a lot, because when you look at aspens, they have fairly narrow trunks. There's a little variety. There's always variety in nature, but it's they don't have as much inherent character as, say, like an old oak tree or a big eucalyptus. There are other trees that have much more natural variety than aspens tend to have. So you have to look for little differences and amplify them with aspen trees. So I'm lightening some of these values. I'll lighten the trunk value too. A lot of these trunks that I blocked in yesterday are just yellow ochre. And in some cases I've darkened it a little bit with raw umber, but it's not a very dark value. It's still a pretty, it's a mid-tone, maybe even slightly lighter than a mid-tone in some places. So what that does, even, it looks like it's high contrast because it's next to white, but it's actually not that dark a value if you isolate it. So here's a palette knife with pure yellow ochre on it. And as you know, yellow ochre, depending on the brand, is it's a mid-tone out of the tube, and it, if you put it next to a dark, you can see how light it is, but next to that white, it looks dark. So that's, it's an ongoing experiment in playing around with values. When you're painting backlit trees, whether it's aspens or anything else, one thing you'll want to look at is reflected light. There will be lots of that, especially as you get towards the ground, because the sunlight is coming onto the ground plane and it's going to bounce up and illuminate some of the backs of these trunks. And it may not, the lightest value is still going to be along the edges of some of these shapes. Like right here, I can add in a little bit of sunlight. I don't want to create a line all the way down because that'll look cartoonish, but you can add a little bit here and there with alongside the edge of the shape.
Carl is asking, how do you capture the mood of fall with an individual leaf disconnecting from the branches and free falling inside a scene?
Oh, to imply movement, you can. I don't worry too much about individual leaves and what's going on. You can create that impression just by, like, say, putting a leaf down there, and it'll give the sense of movement, but it doesn't really, you don't have to illustrate whether it's connected to a tree or in the process of falling to the ground. You can let the viewer kind of puzzle that back and forth. One thing I would caution against is don't get too lost in the thicket when it comes to little branches. You can do some, but keep it implied. If you get out of rigor and you're trying to paint every last branch, you will end up with a painting that looks a little bit overwrought oftentimes, and it's hard to create variation when you when you have lots and lots of detail. It's possible. I've seen people paint some photorealistic stuff that that looks that still has a lot of variety. Jay Moore and 𝗫𝗂𝗲𝗲𝗀 come to mind. They paint very, very realistic, detailed work, but they are careful to embrace the variety that nature has. So that's how they succeed at that.
Hello, Netherlands. Hello, Italy.
One thing I'm noticing is in my reference photo, so in my blocking that I did yesterday, I sort of I tried to keep shape variety in the tree shapes, but I didn't paint leaves coming in front of the trees. I knew I would do that later. And that's going to be another way of creating variety, making this feel real, is to have some trunks that are more bare, especially in the foreground, but then have some areas where there are tree shapes that obscure some of the trunks in the background. And here you've got a couple little baby aspens cropping up, and you can come through and create some leaves in shadow. Really do need to break out a bigger brush. Let's grab a size 8. Charles Hawthorne said that if you want to have more fun, swing a bigger brush. He was not wrong. So here I've got a mix of, this is Indian yellow, white, and I think I added a little bit of yellow ochre to tone it down. Yellow ochre is a great convenience color. You can mix it with the primaries if you need to, but I love having it on my palette just because there's so much of it in nature. And it's also a nice kind of grayed down tone that you can use when you want to do a yellow, but keep it a little bit subtle at the outset. So I find that I use that quite a bit when painting aspens. So I'm looking at my reference back and forth. I could, I actually squint at my reference just like I do when I'm outside. I don't know if you do that, but I find it helps because it makes me focus on the big shapes and the main things that need attention. So I'll lighten these values a little bit.
I constantly squint at my reference.
That's right.
Even a study.
It helps so much. Squinting and stepping back are two of those hacks that will pay instant dividends. in your painting. And yet we forget to do it so often. It's easy to get kind of mired in detail or get kind of stuck on an area and forget to give ourselves the space to step back. So as I create a little bit more chaos with some of these leaves, you know, occasionally a brushstroke will look like a leaf shape, and that's great. But yeah, as I create some more chaos here, I think it's going to make that look a little less, you know, a little less sentimental, and be more a compelling representation of the way light pours through trees. And lightening some of these values is helping. So I think I'm going to carry on that route first, but I'll reassess. You know, I'll come back to this, you know, tomorrow once I finish a painting session today, and I'll you know, try to be honest with myself about what works, what doesn't, and make any kind of necessary changes. You want to be constantly engaged in constructive criticism of your paintings in process. If you get too stuck on an area, or you're thinking, oh man, I spent a whole day painting that, then you're not ultimately going to serve the painting well. And it may actually end up saving you time to make good, you know, good self-critique decisions in the process of painting, rather than getting almost all the way there on a painting and getting frustrated with something towards the end just because you made a couple of rushed decisions or cautious decisions earlier on. So, you know, it's something to bear in mind as you're painting. You know, think about the value composition, think about think about the colors you're using, and constantly be thinking of ways to effectively convey your subject.
Question from 𝗂𝗏𝗄: how long are your painting sessions usually before you lose focus?
I often don't. You know, I'll take a break maybe once in the morning, and then at lunch, and then maybe once again in the afternoon. But I don't take long breaks, and sometimes I'll just bring some tea into the studio and look at things for a while. But one of my favorite tricks is to find a really good audiobook or a book series and get invested in that. And that way it keeps me motivated to stay at the easel. So I love, mystery and thriller and stuff when I'm painting, just because it's fairly easy to follow along. It's fast paced. I've gotten more away from listening to the more educational stuff while I'm painting, because I'm always tempted to stop and look something up. If I'm hearing something interesting, I want to do some research. But with a mystery, I've really enjoyed William Kent Kruger's series. He does a whole series based on an on again, off again sheriff in northern Minnesota, and that one's good. He does some standalone novels too, but 𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏 is another one. But yeah, I love listening to something that's going to keep me engaged, and I would want to listen to that whether I was painting or doing something else. So it's a great reason to stay at the easel and find out what happens. Do you have any fun listens, Eric? What's your go-to?
I can't listen to anything when I'm painting. My brain, I'm ADHD. I can't do two things at once.
That's totally fair.
If I'm painting portraits, I'll listen to, if I have a live model, I'll put music on, because it kind of breaks the awkwardness of staring at a person for hours.
There you go.
But other than that, I typically don't. I might try the books on tape thing though. That might be fun.
Yeah, definitely. And if you pick something that's that's fairly easy to follow along with, and it doesn't get distracting. I do find that, you know, if I'm listening to something that's really dense, or, you know, if it's more of a, oh, if there's a if there's a really strong element of like having to to focus in on it,
Yeah,
then
our
that's
problem.
harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, like scientific podcasts or textbooks, I've gotten, I don't do that as much, but if it's like a cop chase novel,
A lot of people tell me they listen to the Plein Air podcast when they're painting.
yeah, that's a good one. I love art podcasts while I'm painting. I do find that sometimes I'm tempted to stop and look things up, and then I go on this like long tangent of looking through an artist's work or some historical artist that's been mentioned on the podcast. So I try to be judicious about listening to those. But I guess, you know, another trick that I found, if you're prone to distraction, and, you know, we all have smartphones, so we know how that is. You can download an app that will create a controlled like focus time for you. And my favorite is one called Forest, because if you build up like little focus blocks over time, they'll actually plant a tree. And so it's a nice little incentive
Cool.
while you're painting to
Kathleen, we're going to take
at
a
it.
quick break. We're going to give you a chance to get a glass of water, and then we'll be right back.
Excellent.
All right. Our guest today is Kathleen Hudson, and we're talking about painting fall color aspen trees. Good time to be focusing on fall color. I'm getting ready to head off to Fall Color Week. It's already sold out. I don't think we can get anybody else in, but that's going to be fun, painting fall color in Door County, Wisconsin. Then we'll announce next year's and give those people the first chance to get in. Let's see. We have a free gift for you today. If you go to 97artsecrets.com/ASL, you get this free 2-hour video with lots of great tips from lots of different artists. And if you want the DVD version, just pay the shipping. Otherwise, it's free. You can watch instantly, like all of our videos at painttube.tv, instant watching, or you can still get DVDs. We have a wonderful DVD from Kathleen Hudson I was referring to earlier. It's called Waterfall Secrets, and it's a fantastic video and really helps you understand the values of painting waterfalls, because everybody wants to make them pure white, and it just doesn't work to do that. So check that out. She's got some fabulous videos with us. Let's see, what else do we have? I think we have something else, but I don't have it here in front of me. Oh yeah, we've got Pastel Live is coming up in September. We have some of the world's leading pastel artists teaching September 17th through 19th. And all of a sudden, everybody's registering. I don't know what, something just happened. It's like, boom, all of a sudden everybody wants to be there. I guess because it's coming up this month. So 4 days to improve your pastel. And if you don't do pastel, it's a really good thing to add to your repertoire, because there are times when only pastel will work for you. Anyway, go to pastellive.com. We also have coming up in November, we have Art Business Mastery Day, which is a full day of several instructors teaching art business, art marketing. We have some pretty incredible guests that are lined up that's going to help you with your legal, with your Instagram, with your sales, with your pricing, all kinds of things. So if you want to transform your art career, this is designed to help you plan for next year and to be ready. So join us on November 15th. Just get signed up. It's very inexpensive, and it's worth it, believe me. Worth twice, 3 times, 100 times more. I don't know. artbizmastery.com. And while you're there, make sure you to check out last year's event. You can still get the replays for last year's event. Okay, now back to Kathleen.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Yes. So, yeah, we spent the first part of the session talking about creating a little bit more of a loose glow around the sun here. I think that's been effective in making this less of a kind of in your face focal area. I want the focal area here to be defined, but not, I don't want it to be too bright. So I might still tone that down further. And yeah, so that, but you get the idea of how that process is going to go. So I do want to look at tree trunks here as well, because that's That's a challenging thing when you are painting aspens or really any other type of tree. Some of it will come down to drawing, even though I didn't do an underdrawing on this painting. I went kind of right in with paint and drew with paint. It's drawing is still going to make a huge difference in you know, how your painting looks at the end. You want to create variation and make sure the shapes are different. So here's this, you know, the closest tree is going to be the biggest typically. And so this tree has, you know, has a trunk that's twice as thick as most of the others because it's closer to us and it's a larger one anyway. And then there's a lot of variation in some of these other shapes. So another thing to look at is you can create form with these tree trunks by paying really close attention to how the light is creating a sense of form in your reference. And whether you're on location or painting from a photo, you will see reflected light where the light is bouncing up from, you know, from the ground plane onto the trees. And sometimes that will shift the color temperature, so it'll push something warmer and not necessarily change the value a whole lot. I mean, this is still the shadow side of the tree, right? You're going to see some light hitting this edge. So the darkest dark will be, you know, back here, say, as opposed to over here. And yeah, you want to pay attention to what that reflected light is doing to the color temperature on the tree trunk and try to paint it as you see it. Another thing that will help as I'm pushing this further is, you know, you see these little kind of eye shapes in the aspens where you know, you've got like a darker color coming in. It would be super easy to get repetitive with those. You know, you find a shape that you like and just keep going around and around and get noodly with it. You don't want to do that. You want to try to look closely at what you see in nature. There's going to be a lot of variety. Try to create variety and not get repetitive. Our tendency is always to create order and, you know, create repetitive shapes. So you want to fight that and be sure that you're creating something that's compelling and has lots of variety as you're painting. So I've got some colors mixed. These are starting to dry out a little bit because I'd actually used them for an earlier painting I did of a eucalyptus tree in California. I'm going to do some squinting, make sure I get this value correct. This color that I just laid down is the right value, but it's too cool because I should be seeing more reflected light. So what I'm going to do is push some yellow ochre into it. This is just pure yellow ochre out of the tube. And you see how that, you know, that created the sense of bounced light coming up.
Nice.
Right there. So yeah, there are some ways of creating that feeling of reflected light, that glow, that you know, that really it's not hard to see once you learn to look for it, but you have to learn to look for it. And yeah, and outside it's always there, whether you're painting clouds or rocks or, you know, water. There's always going to be you know, light is always going to hit the plane of a form in the landscape differently because there are different light sources. You know, the main light source is the sun, but then you've got secondary light sources from the sky overhead that might, you know, if we weren't, you know, I think implied here is that we're in a grove. So there's not, you know, there's a canopy overhead. There's not a ton of light hitting these trees from behind us. If there were, we'd be seeing more cool light reflected on the tree trunks. But that just depends on, you know, where you are and you know, what your angle is on your subject. So the darkest dark in this shape of the tree is right here. And I've already indicated some of that. I'm going to push it a little bit darker just by mixing raw umber and yellow ochre. And see how that looks. See that starts to create some form. It's still pretty subtle, and I want to keep it that way. You know, if I push the value shifts too much, then it might start looking a little bit cartoonish. So I'll keep that in mind as I'm painting these shapes. Another thing you want to look at is if trees are really close to each other, they might have some bounce light coming off the other tree. So see how these trees are, this one is kind of right behind this one. So this one is catching a little extra bounce light from this tree. So it's, like I noticed that little value distinction in my reference photo and looked for the reason for it, realized it was probably this tree. And then I can go in and paint it like I see it. And it's going to create a little bit of interesting variation. And it'll be enough to keep this painting visually interesting. Now there's going to be some reflected light hitting this tree, and I have to decide what direction to push it. Whether I want to make it, it's going to be warm, but do I want to have it push yellow or maybe a little bit red? Let's try out that color. I pushed it a little bit more towards red instead of yellow. And it's implying that there is some light from the sky coming in through here. And if I like the effect, I can keep it. If I want to push it yellow and have it more like this one, I can. But a lot of playing around with these subtle shifts is just that. Like I can kind of play around with things, see how it works, step back, think about it. If it looks visually confusing, I can always come back in and push the yellow again. But it's, if I see it in the reference image, then I'll go ahead and paint it like I see it on the painting first and give that a shot. And then if I think it needs something a little bit different, I can always make changes.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that will help with making trees look less cartoonish is to pay attention to your direction of your brush strokes. If you do all vertical brush strokes and kind of go with the shape of the tree trunk, then it'll look a little less interesting, might look a little cartoonish. So if you can create more variety by coming in with a brush and using that brush to create a little bit of the form. And it reflects the way these look in nature too. There's some nice little kind of ribbed shapes around an aspen tree. If you want to drop in highlights where the sun is hitting some of these edges of the trees, it's going to be pretty slim in a painting like this because it's backlit, right? You'll see maybe in a few places a little bit of what we call rim light right on the edge of one of the shapes in the landscape, but it's not going to be much. And that's another thing you want to pay attention to and be selective about because it's easy to go overboard. So I'll put a little of that in. This isn't white, it's more of a titanium buff color that I just mixed with yellow ochre, white, and I think possibly a little bit of transparent red oxide. So I'll create that, see how that looks. And if it's not working for me, I can always take it out. I might soften the edges of that shape a little bit just so it doesn't look like a harsh line. So I can wipe the paint off my brush, come in with that shape and just kind of soften an edge here or there. One thing I'm looking forward to is painting the edge of the field where it starts to go into some heavier brush. And when I squint, I see a warm transition there. So I can push kind of a warm purple color, and I think that's going to look really nice against the yellow. I've mixed a complement just so you all can see what that looks like next to yellow. I probably won't use a pure complement, but you can see, let's get that over here. Yeah, you can see how beautiful and complementary those colors are. And I could use maybe a slightly toned down version of this in some of the mountains behind the trees. And it'll really make those yellows sing. I won't have time for this now, but later on, once I get into the foreground, I'll probably use quite a bit of, uh-oh, I'm sideways. I'll use quite a bit of palette knife and try to create some interesting textures in the foreground by using different brushwork and incorporating palette knife and some elements of transparency. And so that's going to be a way of creating some nice interest without distracting from the main focal area here. Am I sideways on the main screen? I'll see if it's something on my end.
Yeah, I'm getting seasick.
Yeah, that's wacky. Let me see what's going on here. I don't think it didn't change a font setting. Let me see if I can
All right, I'll tell you what, I'll step in while you work on that for just a second. Okay. By the way, I failed to mention that Kathleen Hudson is going to be teaching on Plein Air Live coming up in November, November 6th through 8th. 3 days plus the Essentials Day, 4 days. Plein Air Live, learning about plein air painting, how to plein air paint, everything you want to know about plein air painting, and some of the great instructors like Cindy Barron and Carla Bosch and Kyle Buckland and Kathleen Hudson and Erlich Gleiter from Russia, Germany, Steve Curry, Alex Kelly, Kevin McPherson, Cami Mendlick, Richard Musgrove, Evans Ian Stewart, and more to be announced. You don't want to miss that. These things are really, really great because you don't have to get on an airplane, don't have to get a rental car, but you're getting the essence of training, which is really good thing to do at home in the middle of November before all the craziness begins. So get signed up at pleinairlive.com. If you're not a subscriber to this program, make sure to do so. Just go to YouTube, look up Art School Live. All right, or my name. And then please give me a follow on social media. Now back to Kathleen Hudson.
We're right way up. Well, a little bit tilted, so let me fix that. This is
We're good.
funny.
We're good.
Okay, good. All right, so yeah, we were looking at that tree trunk a little bit. Let me go ahead and show you how I'll incorporate some palette knife. So yeah, here's that complementary color. We're not going to use that on the tree trunks, obviously, but I wanted to mix that just to show you how you can push color with a subject like this and really make it sing. So I'll grab some palette knife down here where you're going to get some bounce light and see how that looks along the edge of this shape. And the nice thing about palette knife is it looks, if you Google aspen trees, it actually looks like the bark on the trunk when you have a palette knife that's loaded a little bit with a few colors of paint that aren't pre-mixed. So you can create some nice marbleizing and create some variety without going in with a detail brush. And I'm always looking for ways of doing that because it simplifies my subject naturally, makes it look painterly, and it saves a lot of time too. So what's not to love?
Love my palette knives. Yes. Well, we have about maybe 5 more minutes.
Okay. Any specific things that people want to see, you can drop it in comments. Since this is a 24 by 48, obviously I'm not going to bring this one to a finish during Art School Live. That would be the day. But yeah, you can see, I'll go ahead and show you the top of the painting just so you can see what's going on here. This is, you can see with the sky overhead, I haven't pushed the blue because it's later in the day, the sun is starting to drop. We're looking, if I looked the other direction in direct light, the sky would look pretty blue up there. But
well, also gives you the contrast between your leaves.
It does. And if I push the blue here too much, it could start looking a little bit garish. But I could test it out. That's one of those things I could either.
All right, let's try it. Let's put it in and then take it out.
Yeah, so let's show you what blue would look like. I can always scrape it out if it looks kind of goofy. I'll keep it in the same value tone, but let's mix, let's say, an ultramarine and white.
Carl is asking, do you keep palette knife work off of the background trees? What he's saying is if you would put more detail on the front trees.
Yes, that's definitely true that I would plan to keep more of the texture in the foreground, just because major texture in the background is probably going to make it pull forward visually. You know, you can often look out in the landscape and you can see that with distant stuff, because of atmospheric haze, there are going to be softer edges. And I actually play that up in my work to create atmosphere with something like this, which is so much of the interest is going on in the foreground. You know, the mountains are just kind of a hint of things that you see in between trees, in between leaves. So it's about the mountain landscape. Secondarily, it's really a lot more about the trees. So I would plan to keep a lot more of the texture in the foreground for that reason.
Okay.
But here, let's test out a blue and see how that looks. I mean, it's a nice little contrast, right? with the leaves. But
Okay, let's go to the chat and let's
zoom out.
everybody.
And you see how that's just too much, right? Like it takes away. Let me actually.
Okay, comments, you guys, should the blue stay or should the blue go? Go in there now and we'll get your comments.
You see, it's distracting, isn't it?
Well, you're going to influence the vote.
Oh, I'm totally influencing the comments. But yeah, like that kind of thing gets distracting. So that's why when you're painting, especially something backlit, it's going to be a little bit more tonal inherently. And by tonal, I mean it's going to, your painting will exist within a family of color tones that are more similar. So yeah, I think that's a good illustration of why, even if you think, oh, it's midday, the sky is blue, not, if it's near the sun.
Everybody says the blue needs to go. It's distracting.
Totally, that's what I thought.
Away from the sun.
And if I zoom way in, you can see that sky color it's actually kind of like a purple gray.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that's something to pay attention to. If you paint aspens in direct light, you're probably going to see some blue in the sky if you have sky peeking through, because of the sun being behind you. And that's just, if you're painting before sunset, the sky is still going to be picking up a lot of blue.
Well, that was a good lesson for all of us.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, keep those. One thing I find super helpful is to pre-mix colors. So mix the colors ahead of time and make sure they work well in harmony on your palette, and then you're a lot more likely to find success in in the colors that you are laying down on the canvas, just because you've already harmonized everything well. And if you're painting something that's backlit like this, or you want to push a landscape more tonal, it'll help you avoid dipping into pure pigments or thinking, oh, that's next to that yellow, that looks blue. Nope, maybe it's just gray, but it looks blue because it was next to a bright yellow.
So on Instagram, Art by Angela Maria is asking, what colors did you use to get that purple gray?
I used magenta, white, and I think, let me see, a little bit of yellow ochre.
Okay.
And I may, you know what? I think I had some ivory black in that as well. So that's gonna be what cools it down. Now that's not the pure color I used up here, because I'm pushing it towards warm since that blue was on there. So it's mixing in a little bit with the existing blue. But yeah, you can see the purple tone is, I'll hold it up to the, let's see if I can get,
well,
actually there's almost none on there.
And purple is complementary.
So you can see it's a pretty neutral color. It's not very bright, but next to the yellow, it reads as cool.
Okay. Well, Kathleen, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this for us for today.
Oh, sure thing. Thanks for having me on.
You are.
So I'll zoom out so you can see the full thing. There we go.
Wow, that's incredible. You were a rock star.
Oh, thanks, Eric. You too. Thanks to everybody watching as well. I hope this was informative, and get out there and paint some trees without without fear.
And we will put all of Kathleen's contact information in the chat so you can follow her and find her. Kathleen, thanks again for doing it today. And we will see you on Plein Air Live.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes, coming up.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, time goes by quickly when you have somebody like Kathleen on. It's just so compelling. I hope you enjoyed that. Every weekday, we have something for you. We've been doing it since COVID began. So Mondays, we have Marketing Mondays. Fridays, we have Feedback Fridays where we do critiques. In between, we have people giving lessons, free lessons. We believe anybody can learn to paint, and you can learn to paint too. Even if you don't believe it, we believe it. We believe in you. And, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. It takes some practice to get perfect. And even then, it's never perfect. But the idea is that we believe you can do this, and we want you to try it. We have a lot of resources. We have a website called painttube.tv. We have over 700 different art instruction courses there, one of the largest in the world. A lot of variety from some of the world's leading artists, and these are all professionally produced, like Kathleen's video, which we showed you earlier, the waterfall video. You can get it on DVD, or you can have instant streaming. You can watch it on your Roku, your Apple TV, your Samsung TV, your Amazon Fire. So we have a lot of different options for you there, and make sure to check that out. That's Kathleen Hudson on painttube.tv. Make sure you subscribe to this program, please. Just go to YouTube and look up Art School Live. And we're seeing our numbers are soaring. We just got a new report yesterday. Numbers keep going up. Thank you for making that happen. When you tell other people about us, when you share this, it helps. And of course, we want more people to learn how to paint because we believe everybody should. It's so much fun. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow. I'm Eric Rhoads. Bye-bye.